Okay, it's 6:30 p.m. We're going to open our second public information meeting. This is the information meeting on the Emerald Green wastewater treatment plant upgrades. So I'll ask Mary Lee to read the notice of that was advertised.
Legal notice, Town of Thompson Town Board notice of public hearing. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the Town Board of the Town of Thompson, located at the Town Hall, 4052 State Route 42, Monticello, New York, on November 15th, 2022, at 6:30 p.m. on the planned upgrades to the Emerald Green wastewater treatment plant located on Lake Louise Marie Road in Rock Hill. Information on the planned upgrades can be found on the Town of Thompson website located at www.townofthompsonsewerupgrades.com. Please take further notice that the town board will hold the in-person meeting and via video conference Zoom at meeting ID 880-1386-1951. The public can also submit email written comments or questions by 4:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting to info@townofthompson.com. Please take further notice that unless there is a special notice otherwise, the official meeting of the Town of Thompson Town Board is the in-person meeting conducted here at the Town Hall, 4052 State Route 42, Monticello, New York, in the meeting room, and the Zoom invite is merely a courtesy and convenience to residents and applicants. And I have an affidavit that has been published dated October 18th, 2022.
All right, so Helen Budrock from Delaware Engineering will make a presentation to the public.
Patrice, could you unmute Martin Key? That should be Peter Martin from our Albany office.
Hello,
Thanks,
Hello.
Peter, for joining us.
of course.
Okay, so let me just make this bigger. Sorry, guys.
Close the slide.
Yes, but I usually do a little thing on the bottom, but let's see if that works. There you go. Okay. So, thank you, Bill. As Bill, my name is Helen Budrock. I'm from Delaware Engineering, with the engineering firm that's been working with the Town of Thompson on the Emerald Green sewer plant upgrade and other infrastructure upgrades in the town. As some may know, the Emerald Green wastewater treatment plant serves about 2,400 residents in the Emerald Green subdivision and surrounding residential areas, as well as several businesses in the hamlet of Rock Hill. Because the Town of Thompson contains potential environmental justice areas, which is something that's defined by the Department of Environmental Conservation, the regulatory agency, they are requiring public participation during the planning and permitting process. So just for reference, the yellow areas is the consolidated Emerald Green Rockville sewer district. This is the Emerald Green area here. This is where the plant is located. This is the Rock Hill business area. And the area shaded in red cross hatching is the area that was identified as a potential environmental justice area by the D.P.C. So the plant was built in 1960. It hasn't been upgraded, a major upgrade for almost 30 years. There are new effluent standards for residual chlorine that went into effect in May. So the plant is required by D.P.C to install UV disinfection equipment. The town knew about the new effluent standards for a couple of years, has been working towards a solution, but it's always good to take a look holistically at the plant and what it means, particularly since it hasn't been upgraded in 30 years, rather than just do the UV disinfection that's required by the regulatory agency. We took a global view. Many of the plant components are nearing the end of their useful life. They need to be replaced. The plant is operating about 70% of its available capacity at peak flow per day. So we have requested to the D.P.C as part of the permit process to increase the treatment capacity to 475,000 to accommodate some modest future growth over the next 20 or 30 years. The plant also doesn't have any on-site facilities for processing waste sludge. All of the sludge is hauled to the Kinesia plant for processing and disposal. So this upgrade also includes some sludge handling to help address that issue. The proposed upgrade in this case, we are recommending that it be phased so that the town can address the new UV disinfection equipment requirement sooner rather than later. So it made sense to focus the first phase on the filter building, which would include the new UV disinfection equipment, replacement of the sand filter. As you can see from these photos, this is the existing sand filter. It's in pretty bad shape. And it will also include electrical upgrades and other building improvements to the filter building. So that's phase one. Phase two would be general upgrades, including some headworks improvement. That's the screening process at the beginning of the train. SBR, that's sequencing batch reactor. That's the biological process that treats the wastewater. So SBR basin repairs and installing a third SBR basin. That's what would give the plant the additional capacity that we're recommending. Post equalization EQ tank improvements, upgrades to the air supply system, new blowers to help with aeration, sludge holding tank improvements, a new belt press, and then just miscellaneous site work and energy efficiency upgrades. So from a site plan perspective, I don't know if you can see the arrow on the screen, but this is the existing filtered building. So that would be phase one, replacing the sand filter, installing the new UV system. Phase two would include the upgrades to the biological process and also the third SBR basin, as well as a new sludge dewatering building. And then the yellow are just general repaving and site improvements. The total cost of the upgrade is going to depend on the final effluent limits that we get from the D.P.C. after they've completed their review of the plant permit. Right now, we're estimating that it will be between 13.5 and 15 million. The town did pass a bond resolution 2 years ago authorizing the borrowing of up to 13.5 million. The reason we have the range is because we ended up recommending phasing the project, so there may be some additional costs involved in not only bidding the project into 2 different phases, but also the time lag in terms of increase of cost and materials. The town has been seeking grants and financing for the past 2 to 3 years for the upgrade. To date, the town has secured $3.8 million in grants, which will reduce the total cost of the upgrade. We recently found out last month that the town is also eligible to receive almost $7 million in bill funding. That's the bipartisan infrastructure legislation that was passed by Congress last year. That's not a given. That's sort of a up to amount when the town gets its final financing package from the financing agency. It's called the Environmental Facilities Corporation, or EFC. It will include the grants that have already been confirmed, some amount of bill funding, and then the balance is eligible for what's called hardship financing, which is 0% interest. The way these upgrades get funded is the town bonds the money, borrows it, and then the repayments are part of the capital costs that are passed along to users in the district in the form of sewer rents. A lot of people think that projects like this are just funded through the general funds, through taxes. Only properties in the consolidated Emerald Green Rock Hill sewer district will pay a share of the costs of this upgrade through the sewer rents. Again, they are not taxes. Anyone who benefits from being in the sewer district pays them, even tax exempt users. We won't know the final impact to the average ratepayer until the financing package is finalized through EFC, but the town did consolidate a number of sewer districts throughout the town and restructured its rates in 2020. So users in the Rock Hill district did see their sewer rents go down starting in 2021. So any increase we're hoping will bring it back to those sort of 2021 levels, and it won't be a huge financial burden. In terms of timeline, what has been done so far, we started working with the town in 2019. We were hired to prepare an infrastructure master plan to take an overall look at all of the town's water and sewer facilities and come up with a prioritization plan. In 2020, engineering report was prepared. The town went through the seeker review process. That's the environmental review process that is mandated by state law. Passed a bond resolution enabling the town to borrow money at some point in the future for the upgrade. And as I mentioned before, consolidated several sewer districts and did a rate restructuring to help more equitably spread the costs of these upgrades amongst the users that would be impacted. Last year, we submitted the speedies permit application to the regulatory agency, D.P.C. We applied for financing from EFC, and we were able to secure the grants that we had mentioned before. Plans and specs for the UV component, which is phase 1, were submitted to D.P.C and EFC earlier this year rather. And the second grant, the WIA grant, was also just recently announced about a month ago. So what's next? Looking ahead to 2023, we're hoping that state DEC can complete its review of the permit application in the next couple of months. We're at the tail end of that process, hopefully. They need to approve the plans and specs and the engineering report before the financing agency can finalize a financing package, which will be some combination of grants and loans. We're hoping to be able to begin phase 1 bidding and construction later next year if everything works out well, which means that phase 1 would be completed in 2024. The design on phase 2 would start on a parallel track, and then phase 2 would go from 2025 to 2026. So that is an overview of the timeline. The design is coming out of our Albany office. Peter Martin, who's on the call, is the lead engineer. If anybody has any questions, his phone number and email are listed. There's also a website that's been created called thompsonsewerupgrades.com. That's linked to the town website, but it's also a standalone site that contains all of the documents from the speedies permit to the engineering report, site plans. If you want to dive into the details, you can download those documents at that website address. So with that, I will stop